So that's my whole point. If you want to know about the Kennedy assassination, first understand that there was not one Lee Harvey Oswald, but there were two very obvious ones. And I just want to touch on some of the lesser known facts about some of these things. And another one that always intrigued me was the Martin Luther King murder. And I see that was set up, even though they brought these two guys back in 1953 or 4 together and named them both Lee Harvey Oswald. They didn't know they were going to use them to kill the president, or at least set up to make him appear that they killed the president. They don't know what they're going to use them for, but they know they're going to use them for something. And so they do this all the time. Well, in April of 1967, like 49 weeks prior to the King assassination, a guy by the name of James Earl Ray is allowed to escape from the Missouri State Penitentiary. He goes out in a bread truck. I mean, how many guards got to be asleep on the job for that to happen? And he goes jumps out of the bread truck after he gets out on the highway, and his brother John is there to pick him up, who lives in East St. Louis, Illinois, across the river. And he spends about a month at John's house until it cools off, and he goes to Chicago, and he can't find a job there, but he buys an old Chrysler for $100, and for some reason drives to Detroit, across the river, into Canada, Toronto, and ends up in Montreal. Now, at that time, he meets a guy named Raoul in a bar. Only second or third night in Montreal, he goes to a bar to have a beer, and he meets a guy named Raoul, and Raoul takes such a liking to him that he gives him $2,000 to buy a new Mustang. Something's up, yeah. And they did a little test run. They had Ray do a little test run on hauling contraband across the... Now, this is what I'm telling you now is James Earl's actual story. And he said, I didn't know what we were going to do, but the guy's giving me money and buying me a car. I knew we were going to be hauling some kind of contraband out of somewhere, but I didn't know if it was drugs or guns or what. Well, Raoul keeps him on the string. And Raoul has a 504 area code phone number, which is New Orleans. And this is where James was always able to contact him. And this actually was like July of '67 when they hooked up, and the murder wasn't until April the 4th. James decides he wants to get a nose job, and Raoul agrees with it because the pictures that they have they're going to use later, Eric Starville, Galt, and some of the others, aliases, James's nose was entirely too pointed, but except for that, he looked reasonably like these guys. So Raoul, he's in Los Angeles at this time, and Raoul pays for a nose job for him, sends him to Acapulco. James is living in Acapulco for a while. He said, not bad duty, you know. And then he gets the message to come back to New Orleans, and this is in March of '68. And he picks up Raoul, he drives a Mustang to New Orleans, picks up Raoul, and they go to Birmingham. And they go into the Aero Marine sporting goods store in Birmingham, or rather Raoul sends James. And it says, get me a hunting rifle. And James doesn't know anything about weaponry, but he picks out a 30-06, and he pays cash for it. And he takes it back to the motel room, and Raoul says, "Oh, that's no good. That's not what I want." And I'm sorry, I reversed it. He got a Winchester 270, and Raoul says, "No, that's I don't like the bore on it. The caliber's not high enough." He's going to take it back. You exchange it for something else better. So he goes back. James goes back to the store, and he finds the same salesman the next day. He said, "Would you mind exchanging this? I got it from my brother-in-law, but he said, it's just not big enough. He wants something a little heavier." And the salesman remembered saying, "You tell your brother-in-law that gun will bring down any deer in Alabama. But never mind, yeah, I'll exchange it for you." And, they paid the difference. He takes the second gun back. And Raoul says, "Yeah, this is fine." Now, you see the purpose of that exercise? There was nothing wrong with the gun. We're talking about a shot from 210 feet later in Memphis. A Kmart 22 would have done the job. The purpose of the exercise is to be darn sure that that salesman remembers James Earl Ray. And then they take the gun and they go to Memphis. And Raul has a room at a flop house on 3rd Street, but the back of that flop house, it was a flop house. It was 50 cents a night or something. And the back window, though, overlooks the Lorraine Motel, the front of the Lorraine Motel where King would be staying. Well, on the afternoon of April the 4th, King is in a meeting. He's in a meeting all afternoon, and we later learned that there were 2 spies in there, 2 government spies. One of them was, today has a son in Congress. His name is Jesse Jackson. And the other is the former mayor of Atlanta, later, of course, and delegate or ambassador to the United Nations. What is it? Andrew who? No, that's not his name. What is the guy's name? Young. Thank you. I thought you said Jones. Yeah, Andrew Young. Yeah, Andy Young. Those 2 were feeding information back to Raul, who we now know was an FBI agent, handling the whole thing. Now, I did a piece on Media Bypass magazine not long ago, or I've said not long ago, several years ago, when they were still funked up, on a story of Jim Green, whom I met in Dallas. And Green is the one that pointed out all these inside things. Green was on the 3rd, down the block, 1 block down on a dilapidated building. He was up on the rooftop of an unoccupied building with a .357 Magnum rifle. I didn't know they made such a thing. .357 pistol, sure, you know, all the cops carry them. Well, the reason he was there with a .357 caliber rifle was they didn't want another J.D. Tippit situation where the cop gets killed. The plan was for Raul to send James out, which he tried several times. He sent him to a movie and he wouldn't go. And he kept trying to get rid of James all afternoon. Finally, he said, okay, I want you to go downstairs and stick up Jim's Grill. There was a restaurant down there, Jim's Grill. He said, go rob the cash register, go south down to the arcade restaurant, and I'll pick you up there, and that'll give us some traveling money. James didn't fall for it. Had he, there was a Memphis police detective standing down on the corner, plain clothes in his suit, with a .357 Magnum pistol. As soon as King gets shot, or even before, it doesn't make any difference, does it, if the timing is close enough, he shoots James Earl Ray. In case Ray is armed or outguns him and kills the detective, Jim Green is on the roof to put a .357 bullet in James Earl Ray to match the pistol that the cop would have been carrying. Green never fired, but he knows and showed me the rifle. He talked about the 3rd Mustang. You probably read about 2 Mustangs being involved, or actually were 3 Mustangs involved. White Mustangs are close. And he named a fellow bad boy by the name of Butch Collier, who was a deputy sheriff outside of Caruthersville, Missouri, in that county. And he said he was the actual trigger man. He was the one who was down in the bushes, as everyone pointed to. You've seen the pictures of him pointing. He was the man in the bushes who actually shot King one time, ran back up the hill into the flop house. He had to climb the stairs because the grill was downstairs, but the flop house was upstairs. He had to go up the back stairwell, and when he did, he's just about running in to Raul, who was the one in the bathroom. Raul never fired from the bathroom, but he was there to be sure that they thought that Ray was in there.